Hello, welcome to Synoptic question, A-level PE, psychological factors, 10-mark question. All right, so we're going to have a look at final one in the series now, then having a look at the link between our area in sports psychology of leadership and then how that could potentially synoptically link to types of guidance and feedback. So what I'm going to do with this one, as I've already talked about types of guidance and feedback, I'm not really going to do those on this screencast. You can look back at the other ones. So what I'm just going to do is go through the potential part one leadership questions. I think you can all understand. So leadership, okay, if you're leading someone, you have to use guidance and you have to use feedback. So these two are massively potentially linked. So it's really important we get our heads around exactly what we would have to do for these. So let's have a look then. So what type of questions, how could they be linked? If we have a look to start with then. So part one, leadership. Okay, so how could it start? So part one, the first thing could be looking at the following. It's been suggested that leaders are born and not made. Okay, so that is a kind of a play upon the trait approach to leadership, because it's saying it's an innate, stable and enduring, or leadership qualities are innate, stable and enduring predispositions to be a leader. Okay, so what it's going to ask you then, of course, is to evaluate the theories of leadership. Okay, so that's the first one. Potentially, that could be part one of your 10-mark question. So that then, obviously, I think you'd be okay. Another way that it could start with relation to leadership could be describe leadership styles and explain when they will be most effectively used, or how they will be most effectively used by the leader. And then finally, it could be the following. Using examples, explain the multidimensional leadership model. Okay, and it pretty much give you that model. It will give you the model so you can see it. I haven't put it in the screencast, but I have got the model in there where I'm going to describe it in a second. So if we go on to the next bit then, so that's part one, that's your sports psychology, that's your leadership. Now it's going to look and see if you have the ability to synoptically link the concept of leadership to guidance. So we've had a look at that. So the thing it could be looking for there is evaluate the different types of guidance that could be used to enhance leadership. So you give a couple of bits there. And I think maybe even more likely could be part 2B, which is feedback. Evaluate the different types of feedback that could be used to enhance leadership. So it's really important we get that into our head. All right, so they're the potentials. I'm sure you're aware by now. I'm not saying all of this is in there. I'm saying it's going to be one of these at the top here and a combination of one of these. So good revision. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of double this up as a synoptic question screencast alongside a revision screencast. So I'm going to go through the three concepts of leadership here, or three areas of leadership, sorry. What I'm going to do then is give you an opportunity to pause it with some kind of gapped information to see if you can kind of remember and retain, see if you have retained it and you can apply it to the kind of bit of information with less words on it. So let's have a look then. Start us off. Evaluate the theories of leadership. Let's start with this one then. So evaluate theories of leadership. Okay, trait theory of leadership. So what we've done in psychology before, what you've done in psychology before, you will know. A trait theory of personality, the instinct theory of aggression, they're all based on this process that you have whatever it's talking about, whether it's a personality trait, a leadership quality or aggression, it's saying that it is innate, stable and enduring predisposition to do that all the time. So leadership then, the trait theory of leadership proposes that leadership qualities such as charisma, really important, you differentiate between personality and aggression, are stable and enduring innate predispositions to act in the same way in all leadership situations. Now, it's this theory, the way you make this different is remember that it's not just about stable and enduring and innate. It's about innate, but it's particularly focused on a gender here, if you can remember. So it's based on the great man theory, which proposes that only men could be successful leaders, and male leaders pass down their qualities to their sons. For example, Alex Ferguson, Sir Alex Ferguson, I should say, football manager, passing down to his son, who is also a football manager. So that's one way of looking at it. Then, once we've done that, we've given our example in the green there, they need to be able to evaluate it. However, it's unfounded, the theory, it's outdated. Why is that? Because there are now many examples of successful female leaders. Perhaps the most in vogue at the moment would be Tracy Neville, who's the England netball coach, who's just won the Commonwealth gold with the netball Olympic team. Okay, so going on from there, it also doesn't, remember you've got a generic criticism, because it doesn't take into account learned leadership behaviours. So for example, socially learned leadership behaviours. Remember, you can always do that. If a question said to you, leaders are born, not made, it might say discuss this statement using the social learner theory of leadership or the trait theory of leadership, because you've got to be able to evaluate that. Okay, so theory 2 then, the social learner theory of leadership is what we've got here then. Again, you will kind of have an idea of when you're talking about this, you're saying learn, so you say where they learn it from, who they learn it off, and how does it become permanent. So this theory proposes that leadership qualities such as communication are learned as a result of the environment where, by who, imitation of significant others, and they become, most likely if it's the same gender, position of authority, really important evaluation points there, and also if they become permanent if those leadership qualities are socially reinforced. For example, a young leader imitating their coaches, say for example a young captain imitating their coach's communication style, and then if they're successful and their team win, this becomes reinforced. Okay, so going on from there then, key thing of course is that the generic one is to say that it doesn't take into account innate leadership traits, and also it doesn't take into account the fact that young leaders, or kind of new leaders we should say, don't always imitate experienced leaders. Okay, just because a significant other does not mean that you're going to imitate. All right, so that is a good point just to make there if you're struggling for evaluation points. Last theory then, interactionist theory of leadership. So this one's proposing that leadership qualities such as flexibility or combination of innate traits and socially learned behaviour. Okay, so it's saying a bit of both, and it's also saying that these innate leadership traits are triggered by environmental change, or triggered by things that happen in the environment. Let me put this into perspective for you. You imagine you have a leader who is giving, let's say for example, they're being extremely autocratic on a rock climbing trip. Okay, however, that is due to there being terrible weather. When the weather starts to become better, there's a good chance that a leader might, in fact, kind of switch to a democratic style. So I'll put that down into here. For example, a rock climbing instructor may change from autocratic to democratic if weather becomes less dangerous. Okay, that's showing that kind of flexibility. And finally, however, this relies on the leader. This whole approach of an interactionist theory proposes or relies on a leader actually inheriting innate traits for them to be triggered. Okay, so it is actually saying in order for the interactionist theory to be to work, it's saying you had to have the innate traits in the first place from the trait approach. Okay, so obviously it's the most credible theory in terms of leadership, but you might just have that as a negative criticism. All right, so that's part 1. Let's have a look then now. If I put this on here, you can use this as a revision or a plan. Okay, so you might pause it now if you want to have a look at that and move it on. I'm going to have to move on, so I need to get through the next couple of topics. Next thing you can look at then is leadership. Okay, so we're looking at leadership here. Leaders have certain qualities. So you've got communication there, as we talked about a little bit earlier. So you've got communication as your first one. Then we'll look at our charisma. Okay, knowledge, flexibility. I've took one out there. That's why it's on the right position. So we go down to this bit now. So if I just take this off from now, so you say leader makes all the decisions. Okay, so autocratic then, an autocratic style is the leader makes decisions. It's task orientated. Okay, whereas democratic is where the coach will democratic DE, they delegate responsibility. Okay, and these leaders are based around social. They are social or relationship orientated. They're interested in developing interpersonal relationships. The third leadership style is kind of laissez-faire. This is where the group make all the decisions and the leader stands aside. So let's have a look then when it needs to be used. Autocratic is most effective then for large groups, okay, because it keeps them in control. Dangerous activities, so that safety is as paramount. Low ability performers because they need to be told exactly what to do because they haven't got experience to do these things. And males tend to respond better to autocratic. Now you could obviously argue all of this, but this is what they will have in the mark scheme, so just make sure you have an understanding of that. Next one then, a democratic delegates responsibility. We said that, so it'd be more effective to focus on these interpersonal relationships. So it's better for small groups. Okay, it's better for safe activities or non-dangerous activities, and it's good for high ability performance because they can go and have their own opinions and create their own or solve their own problems. And females tend to prefer this type of leadership more. Okay, going on from there then, laissez-faire, when would it be used? Well, it can only be used for high ability groups that have high motivation levels, because you have to have an ability level to make all of the decisions of the group, and also you've got to have a high motivation because it's easy to become complacent if you haven't got anyone there to kind of push you along. So that's the kind of that could be a thing on qualities of a leader. Autocratic, remember, you have to describe it and explain when it will be used. That's the difference. That's the key thing here. I think this has got a massive scope for part 1 of a question. It's not too big. It's nice and easy, okay? It gives you a good description of each, but it also, people always forget this bit, okay? So that is important. If you're evaluating this, often laissez-faire occurs without the leader's knowledge, because sometimes the group just take over and do what they want to do. You might call it player power. Okay, so going on from there then, if you want to have a quick check, see if you remember that, you can pause it now and see if that works. So see how that works. So that's that one. Let's have a look then at our last one. So we'll go down to this one. So if I went down onto here, this is the multi-dimensional model of leadership. You should get this in the exam. Be very surprised if you didn't. So you've got all these sections down here. So just remember, I mean, you could have arrows going all over the place, but let's just do this kind of lateral focus. I think that gets you in the best position for the exam. So the multi-dimensional model of leadership talks about leadership antecedents, and then also looks at leader behaviors. So how these antecedents link or lead to certain leader behaviors. So firstly, the situational characters. You have to explain and example each part of the box and talk about how it links to the part lateral to it. That's where the arrows go in here. So let's have a look then. First one. This refers to the environmental circumstances, okay, of the group. So, for example, it could be a dangerous rock climbing activity. Okay, this directly impacts the required behaviour of the leader. And what does this refer to? This refers to the most suitable behaviour. Okay, so for example, because of this dangerous rock climbing activity, an autocratic style might be the best thing to do and focus on. Okay, so that's your first link. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Dangerous rock climbing activity, maybe with young students, year 7 students, for example. Therefore, the most suitable behaviour is an autocratic leadership style because it increases safety. Next thing then, the leadership characteristics. This refers to the age, experience and personality of the leader. So for example, we're going to have a best fit model here, and so you've got an experienced, qualified rock climbing leader. Okay, so if we go on from there, that will dictate the actual behaviour. So if you're an experienced, qualified leader in a dangerous rock climbing situation, you are going to decide to actually, what they actually decide to do is to use autocratic, because it increases trust of the group. Because if they think, well, if he's using autocratic style or she's using autocratic style, we trust them because they know it's a dangerous situation and they also know what they're doing. So member characteristics then, the final one, it talks about the age, experience and personality of, or not personality, age and experience of the group. Okay, so age and experience of the group, and we're going to use this as a best fit model. We've got an inexperienced, a young group of rock climbers. Okay, now this will directly link to what the group prefer. Okay, so the leader then starts to think about, do they do the preferred behavior, and this is what the group favors. For example, the leader might use autocratic because the group favour it because they're scared. So imagine you've got a load of really young children. Because they're so scared, they favour autocratic. And this actually wins the heart and minds of the students because they know they feel safe. You're not going to want a leader just going to be really democratic and letting kids push people off the sides of the mountain. If they were doing rock climbing, that's not going to be good. So you see that, that's how that works. It goes across to there. Now, what we've done, once you've explained and exampled each part of the model, the next thing we have to do is see if we can do it this way. So can we now say how these 3 leader behaviours interact to either lead to increased group performance, increased group satisfaction, or a combination of both? So let's have a look then. If the required behaviour here matches the actual behaviour, then there will be an increase in performance, because what is required to overcome the situation is what the leader is actually doing. So that should make sense to you. However, if the actual behaviour matches the preferred behaviour, this will lead to an increase in satisfaction because you're doing what the group wants you to do. The ultimate leadership climate is where you have this concept of the actual behaviour matching the required behaviour and the preferred behaviour, because what the leader actually decides to do is what the group want to do, it's what they would favour, what they prefer, and also it's what's required to overcome the situation that you're in. So this then is this concept of, so required behaviour, preferred behaviour and actual behaviour match, performance and satisfaction will increase, and this this makes the leadership behaviour congruent, or it gives you congruence, and that is different to consonance, which is when all attitude components agree. Okay, so just make sure you've got that in. So the leadership model then the key thing on this, what enhances leadership, is if the leader is flexible. So flexibility is the key component that makes all of this work, because if the situation, the environment changes, the weather gets worse, they might change the required leader behavior. It might become more democratic. You don't have to put all this, but just make sure you understand that this point should come on to your model. Have a look on here then, see if you can remember those bits, maybe pause it now and see if you can have a go at it. Thank you very much.